I think the most important thing is probably culture fit interviews. You do not want to hire people that don't fit into your company culture, no matter how talented or good they are at your job. You are too small for someone to not fit in. So in the interviews, make sure you test for culture fit. Ask questions like, tell me about a time you received constructive feedback. That will really tell you how they handle difficult situations and tell you about their behavior. Will they blame other people? Will they take responsibility? And then understand how that flows into your own culture and if that aligns with how you handle those situations. And do not compromise, because that person will then create problems in your teams, and especially when you're that small, you don't want to have those problems. So make sure you prioritize culture fit in the interviews, and also make sure to include people in the interview process that have a really strong culture fit or are very good at understanding whether someone is a culture fit or not, because not everyone has that emotional intelligence. So make sure you bring those people in on the journey, even if they won't be directly working with that person. The next thing would be have a good onboarding process. You need to set people up for success. So starting in a new company is really scary. Starting at a new company without a defined onboarding process is even scarier. So especially as you're growing, I think often people are thrust into, or new joiners are thrust into a situation without really any training or guidance or support, and that won't really, it's kind of like a sink or swim situation. And some people will swim, but you don't want someone who might be a really great performer to sink because you didn't put the proper processes in place. So take the time to intentionally think about how that first day is going to look like, how that first week is going to look like. Make sure that the manager has put time aside to actually train them, show them all the system, give them access to all the systems that they need. It takes time to really onboard someone well, but you want to be able to spend that time with them so that in the long run they can hit the ground running. And I think lastly, the leadership team needs to be visible. It can't be an us versus them. Like, everyone needs to feel like they're pulling on the same string. So in our office, everyone's in the same space. So our CEO, COO, everyone's like working on the same tables, and that energy really flows to everyone in the company. So we often get that feedback from new joiners that are like, the CEO's energy is just really exciting, and that mission and that drive, like the reason why they started the company in the first place. You want that to infect every new joiner that arrives at your company. I think there's 3 things that are really important to have in place when you are planning to scale. Number 1 is an HRIS, number 2 is an applicant tracking system, and number 3 is leadership training. So let's start with the HRIS. This obviously very much depends on how many people you are now and how much you're planning to grow over the next year or 2. So you might get away with spreadsheets if you're a small company, but at some point that is just going to get too chaotic and will also cost you a lot of time. So I would recommend thinking about getting an HRIS before it becomes too crazy. So I would say maybe before you're like 25, 30 people, you want to think about getting an HRIS, especially if you're planning to grow significantly over the next 2-3 years. There's so many different HRIS systems out there, so you really need to think about what is important at your company and how much are you planning to scale. Because an HRIS that works for 25 people is probably not going to work for 150 people, or might not work for 150 people. So if you're planning to grow significantly, do your due diligence at the beginning. I think it's so important. It will be such a time saver. It's annoying at the beginning, but you don't want to make the wrong choice here, because then switching to another HRIS is just going to cost you a lot of time, energy, and nerves and money to then get a different one. So really do your due diligence on what will be best for you. There's a lot of HRISs have different modules that you can add on later as well. So if you don't need the full scale of the HRIS, you can always add on more later. For example, one of those modules might be an applicant tracking system, which I also think after a certain amount of people is really important to have. So if you're only hiring 5 people a year, you're probably fine with just doing it on LinkedIn. But after a while, imagine you're hiring for 10 to 15 roles. Each of these roles is going to have a minimum of 100 applications depending on the location. Now, that's over 1,000 candidates' information that you don't want to have floating around on a random spreadsheet on your Google Drive. A, that's not GDPR compliant, and B, it's not the best way for you to understand who the best candidate is and having all of the feedback collated into one thing. So I do think that's another really important system to get early on if you're planning to hire quite a few people. And lastly, management training. And I think especially for startups, I think a lot of them get this wrong because they're like, oh, we can think about management training later on once we're really big. But the truth is, especially in a startup, so often the founders are actually part of the founding team are people that might have not actually managed before. They're just really, really good at what they do. And then all of a sudden you have people promoted into a position where they have to lead really, really large teams, never having done it before. And not everyone can manage, from the get-go. Some people are naturally really good at it, others are not. So I can only recommend do management and leadership training as soon as you are promoting people into those positions, especially if they have never done it before. It will save you a lot of headache. It will make your teams perform so much better. You will set everyone up for success, both your managers and your employees, because they will have people who actually know how to lead their teams. And that will help you with retention as well. First of all, I think you need a North Star. You need a mission statement, because when you were really small, it was probably really easy. Everyone knew what you were working on and what the end goal was. But as you grow and as you hire new people into the company, that might not be as clear anymore. So having a really clear mission statement will help everyone to rally behind that and have this feeling of like, we are in this together and we are working all towards the same thing. Communication is also really important. When you were 8 people all huddled around a table in someone's sort of back room, that was really easy. Now that you're 80 people in lots of different departments, that communication flow needs to be much more intentional. So if you don't have those things in place yet, do the regular all hands, have weekly leadership meetings where all of the department heads come together and talk about what's going on in each department, so you have like a flow of information that then trickles down. Or, have daily stand-ups, whatever it is, just make sure it's like the communication part is much more intentional than it used to be, because it didn't need to be intentional when you just started, because everyone always knew what was going on. But as you grow, that's probably not the case anymore, and then people might feel left out. And lastly, culture-wise, again, it needs to be more intentional. Someone needs to make the effort to bring people together, because it used to be really easy to, have music in the office and have everyone have some drinks, or, it's really easy to go to the pub when you're 10 people because you don't need a reservation. When you're all of a sudden 50 people, that becomes much harder. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have, the random dance office party, but the big things need to be planned. So have a good onboarding process. So have first day lunch with the team for new joiners, have cross-department lunches. This is something we've done recently where departments that might not work together as often are having a lunch together, pizza or whatever, just to chat to people that you usually don't get to chat to as much. Have regular socials, do activities, do a bike ride, or do a sports day, have activities. I know, again, this needs to be planned and someone needs to plan it, and ideally this is, well, not ideally, but probably this is going to be someone in HR. It needs to be more planned and it needs to be more intentional to bring those people together, because the bigger you grow, the less that's going to happen organically.